Good evening. It's a bit after 7, so let's start. I see there are 13 people watching at the moment, but people are always late. Welcome. Like I said, welcome aboard at our monthly BlockchainLab Drenthe Meetup. My name is Adrie Wisman, and this evening I am director. I am a production assistant, host, and even guest speaker, so you're going to be stuck with me in the next hour. But I'll try to make it entertaining. Let me introduce BlockchainLab a little bit for those who haven't seen us before. BlockchainLab Drenthe is a non-profit foundation that has the goal to spread knowledge, experience, and insight about distributed ledger technology and blockchain in particular amongst entrepreneurs, students, schools, even private people by organizing these monthly meetups. And now they're online, but they used to be at a physical location here in Emmen. And put it a little bit like this, the sound a little bit less hard. So now we're online. We are heavily invested in blockchain project Bling from Interreg, which is a European project where 6 countries, 6 North Sea region countries, and 14 partners are working together on blockchain pilots in public services. Let me get my presentation like this. BlockchainLab Drenthe is doing lots of things. These meetups, we're lecturing at our local University of Applied Sciences, of course, blockchain. We're doing feasibility studies. We're helping companies on their blockchain path. Let me push a few buttons. Now you can see me, I cannot see you. This isn't Teams or Zoom or Skype or whatever, but we do love to interact with you. So next to the YouTube video, you have a YouTube chat window, right? You can use that to interact with me today and normally with other speakers. But we love to hear from you, where you're from, how you're interested in blockchain or just crypto or whatever. If you have any remarks, please put them there. If you have any questions, I will look at the chat and try to answer your questions. There's a small delay of about 10 seconds or something, but we'll cope with that. That's one of the service announcements. The other service announcement is that this is one-way video, but afterwards we're going to Kumo Space, and Kumo Space is a very special gathering place. You see here one of their maps. It's a room on the internet where you can walk around and talk with other people, right? Probably you're used to using Teams or Zoom, where somebody talks and the rest has to listen. Well, Kumo Space, you can all talk. You can walk around and you can talk to the people in your circle. So you can have quite a lot of conversations with people walking around in that room. And if you have questions, you can talk with them. You can get a drink. You can stand near the piano to listen to some music, all kinds of stuff. I'll show you the URL at the end. And afterwards, I'll be there in a few minutes also. Okay. This monthly meetup is normally on the 3rd Thursday of the month. So our next meetup will be on May 19th. And I already have one of the speakers confirmed, Rudolf van E from Blockchain Foundation, the Netherlands. He's coming to talk about startups and all kinds of other stuff. And this evening, we have 2 topics. What's going on in the blockchain space, and I will be talking about e-voting on the blockchain. Jeroen Wester has fallen ill. That's not Jeroen, but he looks a little bit like this at the moment. Jeroen, if you're watching, I hope you'll get well soon. EBSI, European Blockchain Service Infrastructure, will be postponed till the next time, the 19th of May. Was it the 19th or the 17th? I'll have to look that up. Maybe that's a typo. But those are the topics, so you'll be stuck with me for the next hour or something. Right? There's a lot to talk about e-voting. In the first part, what's going on in the blockchain space, there will be a substantial part about Russia. How could it be else? But you will see. I will have to press a few buttons, and we'll switch over to the first segment of this evening, what's going on in the blockchain space. Oh, like this. Okay, like I said, I have to be all the functions at once, but we'll manage. Now, we always start our blockchain space segment with looking at price action and looking at the markets, what's going on in crypto. Now, crypto, in our vision, cryptos are just a very, very small part of the whole spectrum what you can do with blockchain, right? It was, of course, one of the first applications, so the longest running application on the blockchain, but still, you can do so much more. And e-voting, what we'll talk about later on, is one of the applications. But we'll start with blockchain and crypto first. So what you see here is the notations of the first 10 cryptos of the thousands of coins there are. And of course, they are sorted looking at market cap. And the biggest market cap at the moment is, of course, Bitcoin, right? About 40% of all money in all coins is in Bitcoin. Now, Bitcoin is around 41,000, or at least it was this morning. Ethers, a little bit over 3,000. There's not a lot going on. Solana had a big jump. Right, they went from 83 to 106. So yeah, that's a considerable jump of 25% or something. When you compare it, that Bitcoin did hardly move. As you can see, Bitcoin moved since our last meetup just 1.7%. Ethers moved 11.6%. So it was 10% better. And if we look at how the progress is going, the total market cap of all coins combined went up 5.8%. So Bitcoin is lagging with that 1.7%. The total market cap went to $1.92 trillion versus the $1.814 trillion in March. Right, and the numbers are still absurd, of course, right? I mean, if you look at January 2021, total market cap was 949 billion, which is less than half. So people made 100% return in, let's say, 15 or 16 months still. Now, Bitcoin people, so to speak, haven't been very happy last month. Yeah, the end of last month was quite all right. Markets went up, and they touched 48,000 US dollars, and the world was okay. But yeah, the price went down considerably, and it was even negative numbers at the moment. So that 1.7% in the plus is just a very small thing to happen. The market is relatively calm. Now, this was the picture of last month, where Bitcoin outperformed the orange line, which is Ethereum. And this month, it's totally opposite. Ethereum has been outperforming Bitcoin the whole month. And by at the moment, a little bit over 10%. So it is a smart choice. And that, although Bitcoin, the hash, the complexity is still growing, so hash capacity is at its historic high. So there are more than enough miners working on Bitcoin. It's popular among miners. Because of that, transaction costs have been at its lowest for the last few years. An average transaction in Bitcoin is now a little bit over $1. That is very, very low. In April last year, it was nearly $68, $69. So it's at a very low point considering the popularity. Switching over to something different, very popular, NFTs. With NFTs, I always have to think about this story about the clothes of the emperor that were not there, that were invisible. Here we have a case like that. Do you remember Jack Dorsey, the man who founded Twitter? A few months ago, he sold an NFT of his first tweet. Right? He sold that for $2.9 million. People were very enthusiastic. We were in the middle of the NFT rush. Beeple sold his artwork for $70 million. So this first tweet on Twitter brought $2.9 million. And the guy who bought it then wanted to sell it at the moment, right? And hoping to make a nice profit. NFTs, booming business. You can draw yourself a picture. He put the NFT of that first tweet on OpenSea and stating that half of the money, half of the profit he would make, over 25 million, would go to a good cause. Something different happened. He listed the NFT and it was bringing around $277. I mean, not $1 million, not even $300 was the highest bid. So that's what I mean with the clothes of the emperor. Everybody thinks I'm gonna become rich very fast with NFTs, but the opposite could very well happen also. Now, I don't have a lot of pity on this man who bought it. He's the Bridge Oracle founder with lots and lots of money to spare. But I think it is one of the typical things to happen. I mean, we all know these Bored Ape Yacht Club pictures and people bidding against each other and higher prices, but buying a digital picture for $300,000 and more. But how much is it going to sell for when you are going to put it on the market yourself? So that is a problem. The next item is the European initiative to make a digital euro. Right? The CBDC, Central Bank Digital Currency Project, since some time they have opened up for a public consultation, so people can give their opinion about the digital euro. And boy, 11,000 people have put a reaction, put a remark about that digital euro on their board. It was not nice. I mean, lots of people are reacting like, why do we need a digital euro, a digital currency, while we have so many others? While we have bitcoins and ethers, etc. Why do we need a currency where the government can spy on us? So these people are complaining about why these governments, why the European Union is making their own currency. And I can understand them a little bit, but I don't see these people walking in the street when there is a cryptocurrency number 30,554 coming to the market. There are many coins, so why shouldn't there be digital euros? But if you don't want to invest in it, then don't, right? But so there are very, very mixed reactions on the digital euro. In Germany, our neighbor, there are things are picking up under. If you look at the biggest banks, in this case, Commerzbank has went for a license from BaFin. That's the authority on financial markets in Germany. There are 25 other banks in the pipeline for getting their license. At the moment, there are only 4, including Commerzbank. So they're gearing up to get into the market and to help their customers with the crypto assets. So I think the time is there that also in Germany, the big banks are gearing up to have some service for their customers involving cryptos. I think they have to, because if you don't get into this market, you might miss a lot. Then Russia. I mean, I already announced it. There's a lot of news around Russia and Ukraine and all the other influences it has on crypto in Russia. In this case, it is the US government, the US Treasury Department. They are imposing all kinds of sanctions, and this time they are imposing sanctions on Russian miners, crypto miners. So there are lots of crypto miners in Russia. We talked about that in several meetings. About 12% of the world mining capacity is in Russia, but because of the electricity being very cheap and the connections being very good over there. But America says, well, they might have cheap electricity, but they need hardware. And the hardware is coming from America. So we're imposing sanctions so they don't get graphics cards and all kinds of other stuff you need for miners. We're halting them at the border so they cannot be exported to Russia. So even the miners in Russia are affected by the sanctions. Another thing is that Russian Chamber of Commerce wants their companies, their SMEs and large companies to use cryptocurrencies to interact with African customers. Right now there are sanctions against using the Russian currency, so they are trying to find a way. They're fleeing into cryptocurrencies, and there are lots of countries in the south of Africa, Congo, Kenya, Ghana, South Africa itself, that are experimenting, that are looking at cryptocurrencies to do a lot of trade. So the Russian Chamber of Commerce says, well, use that to go around the sanctions and have a way to pay, to interact with those customers, and still keep the economy going. Also, the Russian tax authority says, try to use cryptos for paying foreign orders and try to keep the economy growing. So they are all right. There's this saying, necessity is the mother of all inventions. Well, it's very necessary now. All financial pathways are being blocked to use crypto, and even the tax authority says to companies, please use that. Russia is also imposing a tax reform where they are trying to do that reform in a way that people living in Russia will have to pay taxes on using cryptocurrencies. We already talked about that also at, I believe in January, where there was that new tax law where people were not allowed to trade among themselves, only through approved exchanges. And the first $6,000 in trade were tax-free, but over that you will have to pay probably a 13% tax for individuals and 20% for companies who trade cryptocurrencies. In that way, Russia hopes to generate some tax income. I believe it's estimated that Russian crypto holders hold around $13 billion in crypto money, and the tax on that was estimated around 125 million. So they probably are trying to get their piece of the pie. There are high fines on not reporting your crypto holdings and not reporting your crypto profits. That's the way they try to scare people to pay their taxes and work with the government. Yeah, well, then we come to this part of our segment where we always talk about scams. There are lots of scams going on all the time, so that's very fruitful, not because we like the scammers, but because we would like to inform people what's going on and what kind of tricks are being used. Now, this week, a few days ago, Beanstalk Farms got scammed in a very special way. Beanstalk is a decentralized stablecoin where you can take out a credit. And it was, of course, a very big trick where the perpetrator took out $182 million. It was because there was an improvement proposal for Beanstalk, and normally a lot of people, a committee of 9 would vote about that improvement proposal. But there was this person, we don't know who it is, right? This person who did a trick with a flash loan. And maybe in one of the next meetups I'll explain flash loans a little bit more in deep. But a flash loan is where you borrow money from an institute, a person, from an account with permission. Most of the time it's very, very large sums. You borrow that money and you give it back in the same block. So in the same block, the money goes out and back in again. So at the end result is 0, right? So you take out the money, you execute some smart contracts, doing something with the money, and before the block is done, you put the money back again, right? So that's why it's called a flash loan. It has to be done in one block. Now, so he took the money out, put the money in Beanstalk. Now he had a very large sum of money to vote for one of these improvement proposals, and put the money back. And then with that proposal, he proposed something and voted for something with the majority of votes, so he could take the money out, and did that. Right, and so yeah, that was a big shock, and now they are trying to get in touch with the person or the persons who did that, and they're offering a big reward. If you give us back 90%, you can keep 10%, and we'll act if you are like you are a white hat hacker. So we will not send the police to your doorstep if we can find you, right? But it happens, right? A few months ago, the $4.6 billion in bitcoins from the Bitfinex hack in 2016 were found, and these people were taken into custody. So it can happen, but when you give us back 90% of the money, you can keep 10%, then we'll leave you alone. I haven't heard of an answer yet, but I'm very, very curious. Still, 10% of that big amount could keep you off the streets for a few months. Talking about hackers and money scams. Here you see the logo of Monero. The Monero is a coin, right, as you probably know. And it is the coin of choice for all kinds of hackers and people who design ransomware and people who have something to hide. Not only Monero is used in those cases as a privacy coin, also Dash and Zcash, also private coins. But Monero has seen a big rise in usage of over 500% in the last, I believe, a year or last 6 months. And that is because it is used for double extortion. And double extortion means they used to just take your files and encrypt them and then ask ransom, right? You had to buy crypto coins and pay them in crypto coins. But now they are not only threatening that you can never use your files again, they are threatening to sell your data. Sell all the emails, sell all the customer information. So they'll try to make profit twice, double extortion, and they're using mainly Monero to get that money. I say mainly Monero because some of these ransomware institutes, guys, some people say that there's a big department in North Korea trying to do stuff like that to get all kinds of currencies. These guys have a price list and they list their ransom price in Monero and Bitcoin. And the Bitcoin price is on average 20 to 30% higher because there is a bigger chance of them being caught. So that is a premium. If you want to pay in Bitcoin, you'll have to pay more because the risk is higher. Of course, banks and all kinds of other institutes know how Monero works and why people have Monero coins, but that's why it's on the blacklist. No bank will do business with you if they know you have Monero. Monero is going to change a little. There will be a fork in July, making it even harder to find people, making the privacy even better. So it'll probably become more popular amongst scammers. Okay, so this is the part of the blockchain news. Let me look at the remarks. A tropical background. We can do that next time. Looking for information about benefits of the directional acyclic graph-based chains versus traditional blockchains. What are the different flavors nowadays with their pros and cons? A whole generation needs education. Yeah, I can imagine. Well, a very short, DAGs are, for instance, IOTA. There are several other DAG-based blockchains, but the biggest positive side for IOTA is that there are no miners, it is feeless, and there is a very negative side to block-based blockchains, right? You have to mine these blocks, and all these miners do the same job at the same time. So there is it's very inefficient. And with IOTA, when you mine your own transaction on your phone, you'll have to confirm 4 to 8 different other transactions. So where on the conventional blockchains, all the transactions have to go through the same tunnel, and sometimes that gives congestion. At the moment, there's a lot of power, so there is no congestion. That's why the transaction price went down. But there have been times that everybody wanted to sell their bitcoins, and then there is a line of orders, hours or even days long. Right? That will never happen in IOTA because every transaction will confirm 4 other transactions, or even 8. So the spinning wheel will start spinning even faster and faster. Okay, let me go to the next segment where we'll talk about e-voting. E-voting. Now this is a big topic. This is a very hot topic also, because there are lots of people saying it cannot be done, and there are lots of people thinking, well, this might be possible. Everybody has an opinion, but the word hasn't been out yet. So e-voting on the blockchain, it's a universal problem. We vote every day, I would say. We vote at the local soccer club when they have their annual meeting. We vote at the association of owners of our apartment buildings when we have to look at if we do an investment for a leaking roof. There are votes going on at the meetings of the local aldermen of the municipality. There's a lot of voting going on, but we hardly or don't use blockchain for that. And why? I mean, blockchain is all about trust, all about immutability, etc. Why don't we use blockchain? Let's have a look. First, we'll have to talk about what is voting. I mean, voting is expressing your opinion in a secure, independent way, so it can be counted and weighed against others, right? Now, when we vote, we think of national elections, right? But when you look at this bin, this cigarette bin, that's also people expressing their opinion, right? In this case, what is the best superpower, flying or invisibility? People are voting for flying. Now, it's a very unconventional way to express your opinion and to vote for something with cigarette butts. But I just want to show you, voting can be a lot of different things, right? Voting is not just standing in a voting booth and making a little red dot on a paper. Now, how do we vote, right? Like I said, most of the people think at this, but there are lots and lots of ways we vote. And we're going to talk about several levels of voting, several levels of security, which have to do with that also. But before that, I want to hear your opinion, right? We have some people looking at this stream. I want your opinion. You have to vote. I think e-voting is good, bad, or you don't know. So please go to menti.com. You can also use the QR code. Take your phone out, use the QR code to go to menti.com. And if you put it in your browser, then you have to use that code and vote. I'm going to switch to my other screen. And there I can see the votes coming in. So you have to, the code is still on the screen, right? 9065815. I'll put the QR code on there so you can still scan it. So try to express your opinion in real time about this, and we'll see. That is voting. I mean, you give your opinion about if e-voting is good, bad, or don't know. There are lots of pros and cons, and I will tell you in a moment. There are lots of people who say it cannot be done securely. But I must say, most of these opinions are a little bit older. The reports from, especially, let's say, until 2015, 2016, are saying, well, it cannot be done. Now, let me get that back. Okay, so 5 people think it is good, 0 people think it is bad, and 3 people don't know. Of the 8 people who voted, you expressed your opinion. You voted for something, and this was one form of voting. And maybe we'll do this at the end again and see if you changed your mind if we have time. But we looked at this. To get you to share your opinion. Now, like I said, we spend a lot of time online, right? We use the internet for paying our bills, our taxes. We make friends online. We put our health data online. We learn online, teach online. Why don't we vote online, right? Blockchain is about permissionless, about trust, having a notary at every transaction. But why don't we use blockchain for voting yet? Right? And that has to do with a lot of factors. It seems very simple, right? I mean, if you look at online banking, for instance, we use online banking nearly every day. It's very secure. Voting online is just giving your opinion like you just did with the Mentimeter. But there is a big risk. There is a big risk. There are lots of things happening when you step, for instance, for a national election into that voting booth, right? It looks very simple. You show your passport, you show your registration card, you get a ballot, you take that ballot, go into the voting booth, make something, a red spot, put your ballot into the box and go home. How hard can that be? Well, there are lots of things happening and lots of things, there's lots of control, right? There are lots of rules imposed. For instance, you can only go into that polling booth alone. You can take your child until it's 3 years old, and after that it has to stay behind while you put in your vote, while you cast your vote on the ballot. Now, there is a reason for that. And the reason for that is non-coercion. Non-coercion means nobody can force you to take a certain vote, to put a certain vote in. So that's very natural, right? These voting booths are open. People can see that you're alone. You can vote on your own. You don't have to show anybody your vote. It's even prohibited to show other people what you voted. And then you put your ballot into the box and it's done. Now, doing that online imposes a lot of problems. There is a lot of risk, and we're going to talk about that. These are the questions and challenges I'm going to walk you through. The question and challenges are: e-voting must be end-to-end verifiable, or ideally, e-voting must have a very low operational footprint. There shouldn't be many people involved. Right now, when there is a national election, there is a small army, well, not so small army, of people working at these polling stations and counting and etc. Ideally, e-voting should not have to rely on that army of people. Now, e-voting should be transparent and explainable, and that explainable will impose a problem when you work with blockchain, as you will see in a moment. E-voting should increase voter engagement, right? At the moment, let's say the last elections in the United States, not even 60% of the people voted, right? And a portion of them who didn't vote, around 40% of the people who didn't vote say that it is because of inaccessibility, or that they couldn't spare the time to go voting, or it was too far away from the polling station. So there are lots of reasons why people don't vote, and e-voting would solve that problem. E-voting, because it would be easier, could be more frequent. Now you have all these national elections every 4 years, but if you have smaller things to vote about, for instance, a democratic process of money that your municipality has to invest in something. Are we going to use it for A, B, or C? You could have like a referendum. You could vote as the city, as the residents of the city, about that. And because it's easy, because it's on your phone, hey, you could have a referendum every week if necessary. It should be that easy. E-voting should be secure. And as you can see, that is very hard. You'll have to do a lot of things, a lot of tricks. It'll become very complex to make it very secure. but there are tricks to do that, and we'll talk about that in a moment. Because of all these rules and the security, etc., it is very hard to design an e-voting, a very secure e-voting process. And even if you have that technically in your pocket, if you're able to design that, then there is still the public opinion. Do people trust that app, that system on their phone to correctly cast their vote on something, right? So trust is a very, very important thing. And I'll give you some examples about Donald Trump and Mr. Biden about trust in the outcome of an election. So even if you are technically capable of designing it, you still have to wait for public adoption. That's a very big topic. Now, the goal of e-voting is making a better system, not an absolute infallible system. That might sound a little bit strange, but it's very hard, some people say nearly impossible, to make an infallible system, right? Software is being written by people. There are all kinds of unforeseen circumstances. So there's the law of the big numbers. If you are having millions of people voting for something, a number of things might go wrong. But keep in mind, these things go wrong now with the old system also. So later on, I'll talk about the Tesla effect, where we want to have something perfect, but the goal is doing it better than we do at the moment, right? At the moment, when I take national elections, and we'll talk about all kinds of other voting in a moment, but when we look at national elections, you go to the polling station, you get your voter card, you put in you cast your ballot, your vote, you put it into the box, and then it's gone. Then you have to trust the system. You cannot see which piece of paper is yours. It's illegal to put even a small X, a little mark on the paper. It would immediately make it worthless, right? As soon as you put a little sign on your piece of paper, then it is not anonymous anymore. So these papers look the same. They are in that box, and you'll have to trust the system that the counting will be correctly, that the transmission of the numbers to the headquarters will be okay, that nobody will fiddle with those numbers. Right? We don't know. That there are rules in place that during counting, different persons of either parties can be present. You can be present at counting the votes. You can look at it. You cannot count yourself, but you can look at it if you think people are making errors or on purpose making mistakes, then you can report them. But it's not infallible. Right? Now, what we're looking for with e-voting and also on the blockchain is we're looking for a faster, cheaper, with less errors, more reliable system. But it doesn't have to be 100% perfect. We hope that it'll be, but if there is one autonomous driving Tesla that drives into a tree, then that doesn't make all the Teslas bad and autonomous driving bad. It's still better than driving done by a person. Okay. Now there is a lot written about e-voting, right? And here you see a report which is called "Going from Bad to Worse: From Internet Voting to Blockchain Voting." These people are talking about internet voting is bad, but blockchain voting is even worse, right? And the assumptions in there are, in my opinion, a little bit old. They're basing their opinion on reports from 10 years ago or something. And a lot happened in blockchain space in the last 5-6 years. Things evolved enormous. Cryptography got a lot better. So I think that is okay, but you'll have to constantly revise your opinion. This one is describing a system where you can vote. They're using end-to-end verifiability and homomorphic encryption. We'll talk about that also later. So lots of publications, hundreds and hundreds of publications. I wrote a publication about that myself. I'll give the link also, I'll put the link in the description, but there's a literature list in there also. This is the biggest slide in the deck. I'm going to walk you through it. The demands on a voting protocol. Now, this looks a little bit like death by PowerPoint, but we'll make some tempo to go through them. So the rules for a voting protocol are you have to allow each person to vote just one time, right? Nobody can vote more than once. That would skew the election. It has to record accurately all the votes, right? If you vote, it should be there. And as we say in blockchain terms, it should be immutable. It should accurately count all the votes. I mean, these are obvious points, I know, but those are the basic rules for an election. You should see that these people trust the count, and that the officials involved should be trustworthy people. The election, the voting process should provide privacy and secrecy. Nobody should know what you voted, because they could come to your door and make you responsible for what happens. It also should be anonymous, so it should provide privacy. Your name should not be known anywhere and be connected to what you voted. The other side of that rule is also that you as a voter should not be able to prove what you voted for. Then you could sell your vote, right? Somebody could give you money for voting in a certain way. And you could have a receipt and show them, look, I voted for you, now give me $100. Let's take Mr. Trump as an example. The Republicans could say, hey, everybody who can show that they voted for Trump gets a 50% rebate in that and that shop. Right? So there should not be a receipt. You should not be able to prove what you voted for. And there's something going on in Holland, a new rule that is doing exactly opposite. It's called the stem fee, the voting selfie. We'll talk about that later. Voting should be anonymous by default, but there are cases where the voting should be in person, where you could see senators in the government should vote by stating their name, so we know who votes for what, for instance. So most voting systems, also in corporations, are anonymous, but if they are voting for a new chairman of the board, then people should state their name. An election should be recountable, right? If anything goes wrong and the other side, the other party says, I don't believe you, I demand a recount, that should be possible, right? So it's very important with electronic voting that there be a record that you can consult and where you can recount it. There should not be intermediate results. Right? Let's say there's a voting going on a certain day, and the intermediate results show that 80% of the people who voted that day are already favoring Biden. Right? Then the Trump people could say, well, that's not going to happen. I won't go and vote because it's already a lost cause. I'm going to stay home. Right? But that could be fake news. It could be fake news trying to influence the voters who still have to vote. So intermediate results should not be possible. And that is a bit of a problem when we look at the blockchain use case, right? Blockchains are transparent, remember? So that's the thing we have to look out for. When you work with blockchain, the rules you saw just now are common rules, right? Those are rules even if you don't use blockchain. There are bonus rules when you use blockchain, right? So the first bonus rule is there should be end-to-end verifiability. So a person who votes should be able to trace, to track their vote until the end, right? You should be able to see if your vote is counted in the end result. Now you remember me saying you shouldn't have a receipt because you could sell your vote. So there's a conflict there. How can I track my vote and be sure that my vote is counted when I don't have a receipt? There's a trick for that. Then on the blockchain, I already talked about that, there's immutability. Each vote is recorded and cannot be changed. Now, that could be a problem, right? Some time ago, I believe it was in Kenya, they said, hey, voting on the blockchain can be very easy. When you give everybody one coin, and they give that coin to the person they want to vote for. You only have one coin, you can only give it away once. That's the whole Bitcoin principle, right? So the one with the most coins wins. That's okay, but this immutability could also work against you, right? Let's say you gave your coin to Trump, and after an hour you get voter's remorse, and you said, I should have voted for Biden. You cannot get your coin back and give it to Biden. You cannot change your mind. And that is a problem when we look at voter coercion. Voter coercion is where somebody puts pressure on you, you vote for that person now, right? And that will not happen in a voter booth at a polling station because you can go in there alone. But if you're voting, let me get my phone. If you're voting on your phone, on your couch, there could be somebody next to you pressuring you to vote in a certain way. So that immutability could cause problems when you use blockchain. Ideally, you should be able to re-vote, right? When that person who threatened you leaves the room, you could put in a different vote, re-vote, and that vote could count. So in that way, there is no way that a person could put a gun to your head and make you vote for Donald Trump. Transparency, I already talked about that. Ideally, you will use a public mainnet for your voting process. Because then there are lots of nodes, lots of servers, and DDoS attacks are virtually impossible. So, okay, let's say Bitcoin has more than 10,000 miners, so there are many nodes which have the information. But there are also lots of people who can look into that voting process. And when you shouldn't have intermediate results, or if you shouldn't be able to connect a certain vote to a certain person, that is not helping. So encryption and security are a very hot topic in the e-voting process. And when you use blockchain, that's a very important thing to look at. Now, there are different levels of voting, right? You just voted. There are 10 people who voted. There are 7 good and 3 do not know. That is a very insecure, right? Everybody looking at this video at the moment can give their opinion, right? I don't know who you are, where you're from. You just press the button on your phone. So you can be sure that these differences in level will have different specifications as for security. Now, what we did was an anonymous survey. Everybody can participate in that survey, give their opinion, right? The next level is an internet poll. An internet poll where you have to register an email address or something, and you are able to vote. The next level is a closed group. I have a company and I have people working for the company, and only those people working for the company are receive a token to vote on a certain matter, right? A little bit more closed, a little bit more secure. Not everybody can participate. In level 2, everybody with an email address can participate. In level 3, you have to be member of a certain group, a company or something. Then you have number 4. That's also a closed group vote, also a company, but high stakes. And with that I mean it's for instance voting for shareholders and deciding about the future of the company. Then the stakes are this high that you need extra security, right? There's extra verifying that you hold a number of shares. There is extra verifying of your identity, etc. So that's even more secure than level 3. And then there is level 5, the national general elections. And not for nothing, I've put the Olympic rings next to it, because that is really the Olympic Games of voting. That's on a very large scale, in a very secure way, voting. And that imposes a lot of problems. Scalability, of course. If you're voting with 100 people or 1,000 people in a secure way, okay, that can be done. Now you're voting with 250 million people. That's a different ball game. And there are lots of tricks you have to do, like grouping them in a city, and the city in a state, and the states into a country, for instance. But that's in blockchain terms, it's called sharding. So there are different levels. This has to have a military grade encryption, because everybody having their internet connection connected to their small bedroom, having a good computer, could influence, could crack, in theory, your elections, right? National elections on paper, then you'll have to be in the country, and you'll be at the polling station, and you'll have access to the ballot box. This could be everywhere in the world. When your elections are on the internet, connected to the internet, your perpetrator could be anywhere in the world. Now, there are many steps involved in e-voting, right? I have some of the steps here. First, you'll have to register to vote. And before I talk about that, voter eligibility is beyond the scope of this presentation. I mean, you'll get a card or an email or something sent to you that you have the right to vote. Now, this eligibility, giving you the right to vote, is a selection process, which is a process that you have to do before voting. Now, there are many ways you can do that. In my opinion, it doesn't have to a lot to do with the voting process itself. So I'm going to start with, you've got that card or that QR code or this code, and you register that you want to vote. Then the voting process is initialized, you vote, then the voting is closed, then the votes are counted, then the count is has to be audited, verified, confirmed, and then the voters can look if their vote was really counted in the end result. So the end-to-end verifiability kicks in, and on their phone they could check if their vote is really cast as it was meant. So there is a certain way you have to approach this process. Now, for this voter registration, the first step, there are also different levels. Like we had at Mentimeter, for level 0, there is no registration. You want to vote, you vote. And you let your roommate vote and your mother vote. And everybody who has an internet connection, who has the address of Mentimeter and that number, that 9065815, can vote. Right? Level 1 is where you register and you get by mail a token. You get a code that you can put in there, but then you need an email address. Right? But the email address, we all know that you can have a fake email address. You just make a new Gmail account or whatever, and then you could participate in that vote. Now, level 2 could be that you receive that token, that number, that password by SMS, right? But SMS is tied to your telephone number, right? So that's less anonymous. That is a little bit more secure. You probably only have one phone number or maybe two, but you don't have 100. You could have 100 email addresses, right? So that's level one level up. The third level is where you get a letter in the mail. Snail mail, not email, snail mail. So you need an address, a home, where you will receive that letter, which is, again, less anonymous, more secure. Then level 4 would be using self-sovereign identity. SSI is where you have proof of on your phone, of your passport, that you're a citizen of a certain city, etc. That is stored on a blockchain, a digital identity, and you use that to register for your voting process. And the highest one is where you have to be identified. Now there are companies, also here in Holland, that come to your door to verify that you are the person you say you are. I had to have this token to log into the tax office, the tax department, and to receive that token, there is a company that comes to your door and you have to show them your passport, right? And then you get the token. But there are also third-party identity providers online, right? I don't know if you ever opened a new bank account online. Then there are these companies that want a photograph of your passport. You'll have to make a selfie, you have to say something, you have to move your head to show them that it's not a picture, but that you're a living person. And then they will identify you. That's a third-party identity provider. So the registration can be on certain levels. And it speaks for itself that for the soccer club that you're in, you probably will not have to have a third-party identity provider. Right? But for a national election, you cannot do that by just registering an email address. Now, this registration security can be strengthened. It can be strengthened by using multi-factor. Most simple example I can give is you need and the letter and an SMS, or you need two other things. So multi-factor will increase security. Another thing that could strengthen the registration security is a disinterested third party. So there is a smart contract on the internet that will receive, that you'll have to address and show your token and then send you a proof. But because it's not connected to any of the voting organization, it's a disinterested third party and it can anonymize your token and give you a new one. So that strengthens security. Then there is the point of key and token management, which is a very hot topic, right? The biggest, the baddest thing that could happen when you are in the crypto world is that you lose your keys. But in an election, what happens if you lose your keys? Are we going to say, well, it's the blockchain. You lose your keys, you're gone. Well, it doesn't work that way with a national election. So there has to be an organization where you can go and ask for a new key or a replacement key, right? So key and token management is a very hard thing to do, but it is very important for strengthening your registration security. What I suggest are a few things, Right? I'm not here to give all the problems. I'm also here to show you some of the solutions. One of the security problems e-voting has is that people say, well, now you have this voting app on your phone, but the first trick that a perpetrator will do is compromise your phone. So they will hack your phone, put a virus on your phone or whatever, and all the time when you start your voting app, it'll take over your phone, it'll install a different version that every time when you press Biden, it will vote for Trump. So having the correct version of the app and being absolutely sure of that is very important, right? So how can you be sure? How can you be sure that this app is really we had that here in the Netherlands, a Corona app was used by scammers. So they built a Corona app which looks exactly the same. Right? And it used the same API that when you asked for your new QR code, then it would be, we would do a man in the middle. It would send your QR code to a database and somebody would look at them and select the correct QR code to sell to somebody else. Right? So it looked exactly the same, but it functioned different. Now you can only be sure that you will vote for the correct person if you have the correct app. How do you know that? Well, you cannot ask the app, right? Because even the most malicious app will say, no, I'm good. This is it. This is me. You can trust me. So the trust has to come from outside. Now, you probably know these random readers you use for telebanking, right? They sign a transaction. Well, you could use the reverse. So you could have your voting app use encryption and a certain question and answer game could be played to be sure that this is the correct app. For that, you would have to have a trusted authority. A trusted authority could, for instance, be the website of the government. The website of the government, you could go there and on your screen of your desktop, it could show a QR code. You could scan the QR code with your phone, with your voting app, right? The voting app could see that there is a question. It would generate an answer, send that over the internet to the server of the government, the trusted authority, and it could show, yes, this is the correct app, or no, this is the wrong answer. You don't have the correct app. So instead of using a random reader for telebanking to sign the transaction, you more or less sign the application and use a question answer game to get a definitive answer if it's correct or not. Right, but it should be a website that cannot be spoofed, right? That's why I put in my government as the trusted authority. The other thing is that the vote has to be correctly cast and correctly recorded. Now, how can you be sure? If you are using a compromised device, right? So there are lots of theories. It cannot be done because there are so many attack vectors on a mobile device. It's open to the internet and everybody can do anything with your device. Now, I think it is possible to cast a good vote from a compromised device. And I can check if that is the case. Now, I'm going to use the principles of interactive zero-knowledge proof. So what I'll do is very simple. I'll cast my vote for Trump. Then there is a smart contract on my system where I can go to and check my vote. If my vote is being received correctly and recorded correctly. But that is a hard thing to do because there is a rule that you cannot have a receipt of what you voted, right? So if I cast my vote, I will not get a receipt on my phone. I know only a transaction number, a unique identifier of that transaction, but not what I voted. How can I be sure I voted for Biden and not for Trump? I go to that website, I give in my token, and it'll show me my vote, but it'll erase my vote from the voting process. So I got a receipt showing me what I voted for, but it is gone. Now I have to re-vote. Right? And why is this the principle of the interactive zero-knowledge proof? This time I can check on my machine 10 times, 11 times, 12 times. And now I'm voting for Biden. Was it Biden? Yes, it was Biden. And now I'm voting for Trump. Was it Trump that was recorded? Yes, it was. The mobile device doesn't know when I have cast my last vote, when I'm going to stop that. So I can check, and like an interactive zero-knowledge proof, it is a percentage of being sure that it's okay. To be 100% sure, you would have to do it thousands of times. But if I have tried this 7 times or 15 times, and every time the vote was exactly recorded as I cast it, then I know that the 16th time it'll probably be also the same as I cast it. So I have a way to check if my vote is recorded correctly, even if my phone is compromised. Next to that, I can check that from a different device. So you could say, well, I can trick you. I just record what you voted for on the device, right? And I'll show you your own result. Right? So you pressed Biden. I'll send out Trump, but I'll show you Biden when you check. But I could also go to the computer in the library, or use my wife's mobile device, or use something different to check without having a connection to this device. So I can find out, I can be absolutely sure that my vote is recorded correctly. Right? So there are tricks to do that. Another concern is attacks, denial of service attacks, right? Where the voting computers are overloaded with requests. But because it's blockchain, we can use decentralization in our favor. We can use IPFS to store the ballots, so nobody can tamper with them. And we can use, for instance, a public mainnet like IOTA with many, many nodes, which are not in a public register. Right? So it's very hard to do a denial of service attack on them. Right? If we have a dedicated net of only a few mainframes, then we could attack them from all over the world. But now we have lots and lots of nodes, and we don't know where they are. So it's very hard to do an attack like that. But security is, of course, a very important thing to look at when you do voting over the internet. And one of the things, when you look at national elections, is, for instance, there is a social economic problem that people who have a lower income have older phones, phones that are not patched, that don't receive security patches anymore. So citizens with higher incomes have newer phones, are more secure than citizens with lower income. And maybe citizens with lower income have less internet connectivity. You can go to the public library and vote there, or you can go and stand next to a McDonald's and use a VPN and free Wi-Fi. But in general, people with lower income have less internet connections. Now, that is a breach of equality, so to speak. But that breach is already in the system as we use it now, right? People with lower incomes have jobs that will make them have buy spare time to go voting, to go to the polling station. They have to take a vacation day to go there, right? As we see now in the United States, there are less and less polling stations. People have to stand in line longer and longer, costing them more and more money, right? And if you have above average income, that's not a problem. But if you are really counting the dimes, then standing in line for 6 hours will be expensive, right? So there are all kinds of socioeconomic problems when using the current system that could be solved also by e-voting. Next slide. Yeah, I already talked about this a little bit. a non-coercion, so nobody can pressure you in voting in a certain way. For instance, by using re-voting. And you should not be able to sell your vote. You don't have a receipt and use that to prove what you voted and who you're voting for. And this is an oops. Here we have a politician making a picture of what he voted for. In Holland we call that a stemfie, a voting selfie, but he shows what he voted for, his ballot paper and his face. And that is officially against the rules. But a judge ruled this in his favor, so people are now allowed to make a picture of themselves voting. But it is against this rule. You should not be able to sell your vote in any way, and that is against it. So there is not a very rigid rule. Yeah, well, security technology. I already said it. Voting relies on very strong cryptography, right? And we have several tools for that. We have hash functions, random and pseudo-random functions, public and private key encryption, zero knowledge proofs, homomorphic encryption. I could talk a day about that. It's magic. Mixer networks, increasing security. All of these tools are now available, so you can make your voting process more secure. Then there is this phenomenon, and which I think is the big factor in e-voting being used or not. It's called end-to-end verifiable internet voting, E2E VIV. And it is a name for the fact that you, as a voter on your phone, can track from the moment you push your button and cast your vote to the end result if your vote has been counted in the end result in a correct way. Right? So it enables voters to check the process, and if their votes are registered correctly, they see if their vote is included in the end result. And you could, depending on how large the voting group is, even recount by using your phone. This is what Wikipedia says about it. But like I said, this will be one of the key factors in accepting e-votes. People will not trust e-voting because they don't know the program, the app, the phone. There will all kinds of people feeding them with information how insecure it is. And that's also a big factor. Right? You don't have to win an election to be a moral winner. That's what Donald Trump tried. He didn't win the elections, but he told all these people that he was a winner, and he made them doubt so much that he was the moral winner in their eyes. So that's a very important factor. Yeah, well, then you get the question, to e-vote or not to e-vote, right? We can make a list of all the pros and all the cons, right? It's faster, it's certainly cheaper. At the moment, it's calculated that a vote in the US costs around $21 or $22 in organization, etc. Using e-voting would be less than $1. So it's much cheaper to do that because of that lower footprint of the organization. It has less errors because with counting, lots of things can go wrong. And you see also when there is a recount that there is a difference, right? It's very hard to have 100% accuracy, but computers do that every day. It's more eco-friendly, right? Think about the paper, all the transportation that people have to do to the polling stations, etc. You don't need that with e-voting. It's much more convenient. You can do that during your work, at home, wherever you want to. It's better accessible. People with disabilities don't have to go to the polling stations and have all kinds of special needs to go into that polling booth. They can do that from home. It'll probably give more voters. There have been some experiments with e-voting and that gave a much larger turnout of voters by making it easier and cheaper. It reduces voter error. At the end of end-to-end verifiability, I talked about that. The anonymity is better. It could even save lives. And I know that sounds a little bit over the top, but here, this is what happened in Nigeria. 626 people were killed during the elections of 2019, or in the whole process from 2018 to 2019. 600 people killed during those elections. So it could even save lives. Now, why don't we use e-voting? Well, there are also a few no's. It's hard to explain. We have problems explaining people what blockchain is, let alone how we use encryption, homomorphic encryption, and all kinds of other stuff. People will switch off. It's too hard for them to grasp what is going on. Now, if you have a piece of paper and a pencil, everybody knows what's going on, right? And until they put their vote into the ballot box, they can see what's going on. And the rest, they have to trust. But not many people think there will be officials that will be doing things in an undesirable way, so to speak, influencing the elections, right? We sometimes see these movies of officials stuffing the ballot box with ballots for their own party, right? Influencing the elections. Or we see people throwing away ballots that are unfavorable for their party. But we close our eyes. Oh, that's just a few. It will not be influencing the whole election. But it's very hard to explain. And there is the fear of hacking. What I told you about. When I want to hack the current system, I have to go to all these polling stations. And I have to put in extra ballot papers. Or I have to retrieve all these ballot boxes and put in different votes. Right? I think it was last year or the year before that in Suriname, they collected all the ballot boxes and the son of the reigning president was overseeing that these things were kept in a sports plaza overnight. And they even stayed there several nights. And he was the security person overseeing that. Now, what could go wrong? But in an online internet voting process, you don't have to be there. You can be anywhere in the world and trying to hack in that voting process. So there is the fear of hacking. There are many pros, but there are also a number of cons. And what is going to be decided? There is a lot of skepticism about e-voting. And there are lots of scientists saying that it will never work because of the security, because of the large attack surface that there is, and all these people in the world being able to hack in there. And like I said, you don't have to win the election. The election, the voting process is not really designed to pick a winner. The voting process is designed to convince the losing party they lost. Right? If they will accept that they lost, then the voting process is successful. Now, if they will not accept it because they think something has been tampered with or whatever, like in the case of Donald Trump, right? Then the voting process is nearly worthless. So it isn't focused on the winner; it is focused on the losing party. Yeah, and then there are these articles. Well, if you use blockchain for voting, then you could even threaten our whole democracy, some people say. Now, there are different aspects of internet voting. One of them is there a high enough level of social acceptance? Even if I have 100% solution to this e-voting problem today, will people accept it? Probably not. Right? People think it's too complex. There is some company who wrote it, and can I trust them, etc. So even if we have a 100% good solution, it will not be used because adoption is a crucial thing. So I don't think we should do that. Then there is the fact that the solution will never be 100% perfect. And that's what I call the Tesla effect, right? Here you see a few mishaps with the car. And now that furthest one is what wasn't autonomous driving, and it was in an accident, right? And it'll make the front page of the papers, of the newspapers. Look at it, there's a Tesla who killed his chauffeur, his owner. And it's a terrible thing, right? But how many Tesla miles are being driven every year? And compare that with humans driving a car, and then you'll see that it is much more safe to use autonomous driving. So yes, accidents will happen, but accidents are happening now also, right? So look at the Tesla effect. We will never be 100% perfect, but the process will be better than the process we have at the moment. So those two things, that social acceptance and the fact that it will never be 100%, but it will be better than we have now, are very important. And there is also a chance in that. I'll talk to that about that in a moment. And that is all lost, right? Even if we have a perfect solution, it'll never be used. Oh, it will not be used in the next 10 years at least. Right? This is a video of Tom Scott. Look him up on the internet about internet voting, and he's very negative, right? He says, oh, okay, because the attack vector and everybody's phone is different, etc. It's undoable, right? And we could accept that that opinion and just go our way. We cannot solve the puzzle, or we could try and iterate. The voting process we have now on paper wasn't there overnight. We've been doing voting, we've been evolving voting for hundreds of years, right? The first voting for government, for local government, was done by using an ad in the paper. The ballot, the paper you would vote with, was printed in the newspaper. You had to rip it out and use that for voting. The first years of voting, people had to stand in the crowd and just yell the name they would vote for, so everybody could hear it. There was no anonymity, right? So the voting process has been evolving all these years, and we will have a process of evolution in our e-voting process also. And I think we should start with that and iterate over that. And the tools to do that are present. Here you see a few companies, a few websites. This is by Microsoft. They have this election guard. They abandoned it 2 years ago or something, but it's still on Git. You can still look at it. It's open source. And Microsoft also designed an election process. This is the website of Votes. Votes is a large company producing election processes, and they several states have used it. There are several companies. They are marketing their services, their voting services. But there is a problem with all of them. None of them are end-to-end verifiable. None of them are open source. So you can check, you can have a peer review if the things they are doing is correct. And there is this organization, every DEF CON conference, there is the DEF CON voting village, and there are lots of hackers grouped together there that crack voting machines, right? Most of the electronic voting in the United States is done on voting machines. So in the polling station, there is a electronic voting machine which records the vote and sends it over the internet, maybe immediate, or when it summarizes all the votes of the day, right? There has never been a voting machine they couldn't crack. And it's a big community you see there. And there's the other weak link, the people using the voting machine, we, us, right? Because it's easier to hack the person than to hack the machine, right? So keep that in mind. We are the weak link. Now there's this report I'm very enthusiastic about, the future of e-voting, and it's called End-to-End Verifiable Internet Voting Project. Look it up. It's 136 pages. You need a few days to chew through it, but it's written by 39 experts, and they have all kinds of best practices about e-voting. Now, this report is written in 2015, 2016. So there are things in there that already have been evolving in the blockchain world. It's on a higher standard. For instance, they were talking about don't use blockchain because you could influence that as a miner. The miner gets all the votes and has to put them in a block, so the miner could change the votes, right? If you use IOTA, you mine your own transaction, so there is nobody in between that could change your vote. They are talking about if you use Ethereum or a Bitcoin, a proof of work blockchain, then the price of the transaction price could be inflated, right? I talked about the Bitcoin transaction fee being $1. It was $70 last year in April. Now imagine that during an election, the transaction fee would go up. That would have an impact on the elections, right? Now, IOTA is feeless. So there have been new technologies that are already mitigating the problems they are signaling in that report, but it's a very good report. What they report is problems like the commercially available solutions are not open source, etc., not really truly end-to-end verifiable, etc., etc. I have a complete list of that, and I have here some of the solutions to that. Available solutions are not open source. Well, if you would fund it, for instance, what we do with Interreg Bling, then it would be open source. There is no commercial party behind it. There is a governmental or even intergovernmental solution for that, and making it open source. So peer-to-peer review is easy. Here you see available solutions are not truly end-to-end verifiable. When I do an IOTA transaction, I could get a receipt of the message ID of the transaction. Right? I cannot see what the message was because it's encrypted with the public key of the organization. But I have a receipt and I can see in which second, on which day, which transaction ID I voted for, and I can check if that message was included in the end result without having a receipt. Well, there are all kinds of other things. Privacy, you could mask your voting by a VPN, and because we use a public mainnet, it's very hard. It could be on any server in the world. So there are lots of things you can change from that report to the current technology. And in our instance, IOTA plays a big role. Scaling and also the fees are a big part of that. Okay, we're coming to the end. Proposed solution. The solution I designed looks a bit like Helios. You can Google that. There is a Belgian system which more than 10 years ago was developed. And when I designed my system and was looking for other projects, Helios looked like that. But this is a blockchain version of Helios. And Helios, for instance, makes you check your vote before you send it to the database. And I say, well, we're going to cast your vote and then check if it's recorded correctly. Right? So the solution I designed is a little bit more secure than Helios, but Helios also uses homomorphic encryption. And homomorphic encryption enables you to count the votes without decrypting them. So the votes are counted without taking the encryption off. Already, this is a centralized solution. There's a database where the votes are recorded, and we, of course, with blockchain want a decentralized solution. So it could be better than that. Okay, that's the end of the presentation. It's been more than an hour. Let me look if there are any questions. Jendrikman, transactions don't necessarily need to carry monetary value. Yeah, that's on IOTA. Robert says, for voting, one needs to be able to verify real human voters against robotic ones. Voting elections is like natural selection for the best government, similar to evolution. However, there need to be a lot of fit candidates in order to make and decide a beneficial difference. Yeah, well, that's the whole story behind the voting process. Good candidates, good government, etc. But the voting process is yeah, well, something we've been doing for maybe 1,000 years. Writing a name on a piece of paper and putting it in a box, and then somebody else who we all trust taking them all out, reading them out loud, and then selecting somebody, but then in an electronic form. And I hope that you understood that the process that's going on when you take your pencil and your piece of paper and go into that booth looks very simple, right? We all know how to do that, but there is a whole reason why we do that. So you cannot be pressured, and it is anonymous, and lots of other rules. And to do that with e-voting, sitting on your couch in a secure way, needs a lot of rules, needs a lot of security, lots of encryption, lots of thinking about what could go wrong. And I think it is possible. With the current technology of encryption, with the current blockchain technology, we could make an end-to-end verifiable, secure internet voting process. And if anybody has some thoughts about that, or wants to talk about that with me, just give me a signal, and we'll have a very fruitful discussion about that. I don't see any other questions. I think it's a small miracle that you stayed around, because there's been a lot of talking, and it's a very theoretical project. But as soon as we start programming on that, I think we'll see results very fast. And there is a very big chance we have here, right? We could start small and introduce voting, blockchain voting, in small groups, right? At the soccer club, or at this owners association, and have people get used to blockchain voting from the bottom up, right? And when people use that internet voting and it is successful and it is user friendly, then they will introduce the blockchain voting system by themselves in larger companies. Why don't we use that system we use at the soccer club, right? And it'll grow and it will evolve in something that might, in a number of years, be able to do a regional election of a state or in a municipality, and then grow. And of course there are technical hurdles to overcome, and of course some of these Teslas will drive against a tree, right? But it's still better than what we use now as a pencil and a piece of paper. Okay, I don't see any other questions. I hope you are still awake. Then I'm going to go to my last thing, is thank you for watching. And our next meetup, well, will be May 17th. I had May 19th on that first slide, but it is May 17th, where we, of course, will have 3 topics. What's going on in the blockchain news. We will have the Blockchain Netherlands Foundation, Rudolf van E coming to talk, and another topic that we will be giving away a few weeks before the meetup itself. I'm gonna do the YouTube thing again. Please like, subscribe, etc. because then the YouTube algorithm will make this video better discoverable for other people who are looking for blockchain videos. And I hope to see you at the Kumo space. I will put the URL on the screen right now.